Old man doing a podcast. Real weirdos. We have English degrees. Real weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. And 3, 2, 1. Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill
Marky
is a washed-up actor.
Legendary voice actor.
I think, yeah, he just does voice stuff most of the time.
That's what washed-up actors do. Oh!
Well, he did it like... He started doing that immediately, though. He was in, like...
Stop adding logic to my, like shitty joke.
It was a shitty joke, though. That's
exactly.
why.
Well, I don't appreciate it.
That's fine. That's fine by me. You don't appreciate it.
I'm just letting you know.
The best things in life are the things they thrust upon you that are unappreciated. Like a movie we're gonna do.
That's part of waking up. It's Folgers in your cup.
He kind of like, I feel like he knew from the beginning. He's like, shit, I'm never gonna be anyone but Luke, am I? Fuck it. I'm gonna carve out my career this way.
I see him more as the Joker than anyone.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
like when I hear his voice and shit, like...
Yeah, like that was his best work.
Yeah, he's a really great voice actor, for sure.
Not doing cocaine and pretending to be a Jedi.
Like Carrie Fisher?
Like all of them. Just fucking and doing cocaine. What are we? Are we space wizards? We go...
To
be fair, that sounds like a phenomenal lifestyle.
That sounds awesome. I would love to go back and do that.
I don't love it, but when she passed, I remember like the reaction was like, oh yeah, she did a lot of coke back in the 70s and 80s.
Dude, did you hear the way she talked?
Oh,
her nose was like a fucking Michelin blimp. Are you kidding me? Her nose was like a blown out fucking bag vacuum. Just like she talked as if she snorted all the world's marbles.
Seriously. All that tea in China.
Poor Carrie Fisher. She was fucking hilarious.
No, yeah, she was great. No, my God, are you kidding me? She was fucking great. It's just like cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
It is. Does a number.
Indeed. Does a number on your sniffer.
Who's that fucking actor whose nose is all fucked up? Or not actor, comedian or something like that.
John Mulaney?
Not John Mulaney. No, his nose is all fucked.
I have no idea. Jim Belushi.
Is it Artie Lang? I think it's Artie Lang.
Oh, Artie Lang did a fuck ton of
I think
coke.
his nose is all fucked up from like doing too much coke.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense.
That's very unfortunate.
I read his book, Too Fat to Fish. I would read it periodically when I would go to my friend's house and take a dump. Like it was just the book that was in the bathroom. So I'd read like a few chapters here. Next week I'd come back, read a few chapters there. It's a crazy life, man.
I couldn't shit at my own house.
Yeah,
I just went to his house and shit. Hey, boy, can I come over your house and shit real quick?
Sat on the toilet and read chapters.
See, that's the thing is, I did that. I was really late to the game using my phone on the toilet. Mm-hmm. Like I really adamantly refused for a long time. Like Skylar was already using his phone like while pissing. But like by the time I started using it to like when I was on the toilet, because I just always had a book on the top of the toilet that I was reading. That was like my toilet book. It was usually short stories or like a poems.
Poems is perfect because then it's just, I mean, I don't even have to explain it. It's perfect.
Yeah, I'd read like Amy Hempel, like short stories that are like, a page long.
Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, I'm just kidding. That poem's fucking humongous.
That's so laughing.
I read it every time I go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's but then I started using my phone and then it was game over from there. I think that's a big turning point in like phone use because then you start finding it acceptable to use it like everywhere.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys something about phone use? So,
like in movie theaters, I love it when people use them in movie theaters.
As millennials, I feel like we got pegged a lot for like oh my God, you guys are always on your phones. You're always like just doing your thing. But now, dude, when I go out in public, it's the boomers who are stuck onto their phones. They like play Bejeweled and shit like nonstop.
I'm gonna key you in on something. I'm not huge on like generational shit. I'm like, humans are fucking stupid from the jump. And so like it doesn't matter like what year you were born in, you're just stupid in that generation. And so I'm not really into like boomers and Gen Z. Like everyone's just an idiot and just exists in idiot land.
Okay, boomer.
And so like like I see just people, like I see everybody, just everybody's on their phone. Like doesn't matter, like that. I see 9-year-olds on their phone. I see 90-year-olds on their phone. Everyone's on their fucking phone. It's just
9-year-olds being on. I mean, it is a sign that it's so ubiquitous when like the homeless or like street vagrants.
They've made it essential
right?
to exist.
Yeah,
that's the difference. Is like when you make something essential to live, then it doesn't matter. Like it becomes like food. Like you need a cell phone now. Like it's not a I don't have a cell phone. It's like, what the fuck? Do you live on Mars? Like, like, it's just, it's how it is. Nobody has home phones anymore.
I know.
If you do, it's tied into like your old internet package.
Yeah. Package that you have. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Any hoozle.
Speaking of more food, I want more pancakes.
More pancakes.
Mota panakeku.
Mota panakeku.
There should be more blood.
Mota panakeku.
Height. Oh, shit.
Respect. I like the respect.
I got the frozen banana thing now, by the way, Jesse. From when
you
called back
that?
for it at the beginning of the episode last time.
Oh, it's such an incredible moment.
It's such a good scene because like
Jeff and I were dying laughing.
Yeah, I know. We'll save it because like it's just like it's a scene where he's putting like 100% of his acting chops into filleting a banana,
sucking on a banana.
Oh boy, you want to get it started, boys?
Glorious reaction shots.
Let's get it started. There will be blood. I mean,
Is that the next
all
one?
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead and start up.
And we're back. Reel Weirdos, Paul Thomas Anderson, Part 2. Last time we did the first 4 films. Hard 8, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and Punch Drunk Love, Jeff's personal favorite, starring Adam Sandler.
No.
Oh, I thought I'd get a reaction out of him.
You
right
did.
there.
I scoffed.
Oh,
That's all
I
you're
hear
gonna
you.
get out of me.
Shit, that's all. And today we're going into a big meaty segment here for part 2.
Oh yeah.
Starting with There Will Be Blood from 2007. Now this is, I can say without any reservation, I think one of the greatest films ever made.
Oh,
Featuring perhaps the single greatest performance in cinematic history. We can talk about that. But it's the story about the rise of an oil man in the early 20th century, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, but functions more so as a bleak, almost gothic piece of Americana. It's a very psychological movie centered on this character, Daniel Plainview, who is, like, let's not beat around the bush here, he's a violent sociopath. Tracks his strained relationship with his son, who is deafened when one of the oil derricks bursts, as well as a continual interplay with a young priest by Paul Dano and other characters. Oh yeah, and before we jump into it, on a Reel Weirdos note, I think this is kind of interesting. This movie's actually a good part of the reason why Alex is on the podcast. Besides being like a thoughtful and prolific movie watcher boy, he also shared with me a paper he wrote about this movie when we were at UC Berkeley. So when it came time for the podcast, I was like, this is the guy. And Jeff, I might as well say why Jeff's here too. He's also here because he's a good movie boy, obviously. But he's mostly here because some of the greatest cinematic experiences in my life have been making him watch things that he hates. It imbues me with life and love and laughter.
Talking about
unfortunately
sociopaths.
We haven't gotten him into rage mode yet outside of funny games, but don't worry, we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm sure that Jesse has something brewing that's going to get me real fired up.
I hope so. We'll see. I think I'm going to come over and watch it with you. I'm not going to tell you what it is until we watch it. And I'm really looking forward to it because I think we're gonna laugh a lot.
Oh, Christ, I'm so nervous. I don't like surprises, and I don't like this. It's like he's gonna make me watch Riccio again.
No, I'm not
He's
gonna
gonna
do that.
but you say that, but it would be the ultimate like long game if you're like, no, I would never do that, and then like you would just like all of a sudden it just appears on the screen.
No, but I wouldn't do that.
The script has started already the way that Jeff predicted.
That's what I'm saying, man. It just
Yeah.
feels off.
Well, it's hard to know. Well, Alex knows,
I do.
but he's not going to verify one way or the other.
Oh man, I'm gonna like drive down to LA and cut it out of you, boy.
Like tie you up with tape, do a funny games on you.
Seriously.
What's the movie?
Oh, shit.
Oh boy.
There Will Be Blood, starring
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. It's a good movie.
Oh,
It's
man.
one of the best movies.
Oh, easily one of the best movies of all time. One of my all-time favorites. I say that a lot, I know. But that's because we choose the movies that we like, so that makes
true.
sense.
It
It's
might
true.
be
We talk about movies we like a lot.
one of the best movies of the 20th century, if not like the best movie. I know a lot of people say that. It's just like, it came out in 2007, you said? Jesse?
Yes.
I don't remember anything hitting me as hard as this movie in this new fledgling century that we're in. So, yeah, I don't know. It definitely has a shout for like greatest of all time, but at least for the 21st century, I think it's just unparalleled.
Well, that's easy. Yeah, this movie is perfect, and I say that with no hesitation. I don't say that like oh, but it could be. This movie is perfect. Everyone acts to their highest level. Everyone puts in their heart and soul. Daniel Day-Lewis is probably. I mean, people always tout Lincoln as his most convincing role, but Daniel Plainview is a terrifying individual. He's truly terrifying.
Fucking horrifying person who doesn't want anyone else to succeed. I was thinking about this while I was watching it, and it's like there are a lot of great actors who I really like, but watching him in this after just like we had watched Phantom Thread the day before, Jeff and I had, and like he has different eyes and a different soul. It is so complete that it's just crazy. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like he has different eyes.
Yeah, no, 100%.
No, to me, he didn't even look like the same person between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Yeah, what were you saying?
Oh no, I was just gonna agree. He gets like to the microscopic level of acting, right, where it's like little ticks or little like, I don't know, like for some reason Jesse is probably pretty familiar with this guy going through Akira Kurosawa's works, but I feel like if there was one actor who could have replaced Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, which is almost a travesty to say, but it probably could have been Toshiro Mifune. He has this
If he were alive.
glare. Yeah, exactly. He has like this glare to his face, and like I always say this, it's like almost animal or like bestial. And in There Will Be Blood, like he's like just an entirely different creature, like different DNA from any of the other roles that Daniel Day-Lewis has played. And yeah, it's really cool that you focused on the eyes because that makes perfect sense.
No, totally. It's in the scowl, and it's like I like that you said a different creature. It almost feels like he's a predator in this movie, and everything else, everybody else, is fucking gazelle. Like he has this way that he moves through the movie with intent and with purpose, like a predator moves through the grass. It's like it's so calculated, every step, every movement. It's like you think the whole time, you feel like one of the people going up against Daniel Plainview.
Right. You get a good sense of his insane level of determination as well in the opening moments where you see him, like he built a hole in the ground to try to find oil basically, and it goes wrong and he breaks his leg or something, but he's basically like crawling. You see him crawling and the camera pans up as this beautiful shot, and it's just like the distance of wherever he is, California, Arizona, and it's like motherfucker crawled, we have no idea how far back to town and like he didn't go to the doctors, just went straight to getting the rocks tested.
Yeah.
You're like, this man is a beast.
Yep.
Yeah, it's such a great metaphor that he's so determined that he crawled out of the bowels of the earth to get this. It's almost like he was born to this creature again. Like he's a miner before, and then this happens, and it's like, no, I will get this gold.
Yeah.
I will get this empire that I want.
It's so penetrative too, in like a sexual way, because he has no like female counterparts in the movie, and he is not driven by romance or lust. It's like his act or his release is literally penetrating the earth and extracting these like minerals for his own benefit, and that's what like drives him. That's like his lust in the movie. I mean, there's no women either, but
No, I like that though. That's a really interesting read. I never really thought about it like that. That he's like penetrating the earth and extracting something from it. It's such a more of a god complex type thing. That's very interesting. And I think it's important to point out that while money is a motivation for him, Daniel Plainview is not motivated solely by greed.
Exactly.
It's so much bigger than that.
What do you think he's motivated by?
Well, I mean, he says it clearly in the movie. I mean, he very much clearly illustrates his intentions. You know, he says, there's a sickness about me. I don't want anyone else to succeed.
I don't want anyone else to succeed.
He has I think that there's a part of him that just feels superior to other people. And I think that he feels like this is owed to him. And I think that like he feels like he's taking what he's owed from the earth, from the place around him. Because we get very little detail about Daniel Plainview, even though there's a whole sequence in which we meet his supposed brother, and you know, they have a whole conversation about kind of the old times, and Plainview even fools him into revealing that he's not his brother by tricking him with a little piece of history from his past. So we learn things, but it's all so vague that we really don't know who he is, who his parents were.
It is. It almost doesn't matter. It's more about the psychological portrait. And you see that exemplified in the filmmaking, and especially when the oil derrick bursts into flame, and you have this amazing shot where he's just lit by the firelight with the oil on his face with this inscrutable expression, and it's just like pure evil.
Yeah, well, it's hellfire. I mean, we easily say that this movie has very religious connotations. Obviously, he's at odds with Paul Dano's character, Paul Sunday, who is kind of a egotistical cult leader almost. He wants to be a evangelist. He's like an early evangelist priest.
He's like very Daniel, like in a sense.
Yes, no, it's a very much a movie about the two egos clashing. There's not enough room in this place for both of these humans to exist. This is just and Paul's character brother, I forget his name. Eli knows that. Eli is the smartest character. Eli is the hero of the movie to me, because Eli knows that this is going to cause some kind of destabilization. He knows the type of person his brother is, and he knows the type of person Daniel is, because he researched him. Mm-hmm. And so I think that this was an intentional ploy to destabilize his brother.
I do know the family, or at least Paul, looks down on Eli. You know, when he goes and he beats his dad up, he's like, it was Eli, you know, the Cain to the Abel type thing. Like, he betrayed us.
Right. The dad's name is Abel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a weak man, Abel.
Exactly.
Yep. I mean,
stupid man.
I think it's the idea between true Christianity and fake Christianity.
Exactly.
Like, Eli is a true Christian. He comes in, he's quiet, he's calm, he's polite, but he's firm. You know, he follows the tenets of Christ, as Christ was polite but firm. And like, he knows what he wants and he gets it. And then he gives the information like he said he would. He keeps his word. You know, he's a good Christian man, and he knows the type of sycophant that his brother is, and wanted away from that.
It's an interesting movie as well, speaking on the characters, because nobody in this movie is sympathetic, really. Maybe Daniel's son is
Yeah.
at the
HW.
end, and yeah, HW. Because you're like, wow, you have to deal with that as a father. And when he's older, that they have an interesting scene together. But like a lot of movies, even if it features villains, they're sympathetic to a degree, and that's what makes them good, sort of core of humanity. This movie, I almost want to say it doesn't have that, but that almost makes it its own realm of interesting because it's so well done. Where it's like you're just simmering in this pool of psychosis of these characters and reveling in the photography and all this stuff.
I actually am extremely sympathetic to Daniel Plainview as a character. I hope that doesn't say too much about me as a person.
Tell us.
But, there are a few scenes here and there where you see under the shell or under the armor. Not like in the more typical way. So, for instance, his son, HW, when they first go prospect the land, HW finds oil. He falls and slips while they're quail hunting, and he finds like a little thing of oil. And him and his father have this moment where they're kind of just talking about it, and the father's like, this is, it's called seepage or something. He's like, this earthquake oil rising up from the rocks, and he like pats HW on the back, and it's like this really soft and delicate father-son moment, shot beautifully, by the way, since we're talking about the director. Everything in this movie is shot beautifully.
Yeah, you just take that for granted.
It's
Absolutely.
The acting outshines the directing, unfortunately. In this
fall
movie.
over watching it gorgeous.
Yeah. And then, the moment with his brother, especially, there's a moment where he...
just before he realizes that he's a fake, right?
Exactly.
When they're at the beach.
Well, they're at the beach, and he says, remember the peach? I'd like to go to the peach tree dance. Look her up some girls and take him to the peach tree dance. And I think that the phrase "liquor up some girls and take to the peach tree dance" is small, but it tells you so much about Daniel as a young man. Like everyone other man, like, oh, what you do is like, if you can't get the girl with your charm or your handsomeness, like you liquor him up a little bit, you can take him to the peach tree dance. And it's like there was a moment where Daniel was normal and he was going through the adolescent throes of life, trying to figure out, like, am I a romantic dude? Like, am I supposed to have a woman? Like, what's going on here? And he's hurt.
Do you think it's that, or do you think that there's like something predatory even there? Liquor up a girl and take her to a dance.
That is also another reading, right? I just don't see him as the type of, like...
Not that kind of predator.
Yeah, no. I know what you're saying, though. But, like, there is something there if we go with the reading. That's a good point, too. But, he looks genuinely hurt when he finds out that his supposed brother has violated, like, this childhood, or this, like, violated the mythology of Daniel's past. Where he's like, this was my story, and you were supposed to be a part of that story, and you've come in and not only conned me, but like you've made my mythology and my past almost trivial because you don't remember it.
Violated.
Yeah.
It's a violation. But yeah, the point about the son is interesting, and you're correct. I think there's a lot of genuine tenderness. It's the one chink in his armor.
Yeah.
And you do see that. You see that throughout all of the scenes where you have HW as a child. There are moments when the oil comes first.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it is the chink in his armor. Until he grows up and you have the end of the film where he just whether by brute violence towards Paul Dano's character or through the psychological violence with his son, he shuts down everything else, and it's just within his fortress of desiccation at this point.
Yeah, he very much utilizes HW as a tool. To keep a tool like a pick or an oil drill, you have to keep it sharp. And so for a child, you have to show a child love. And so he loves HW in the capacity that he believes is necessary to create a child happy enough to utilize as a tool.
Do you think, because that's what he says at the end, he's like, you're a bastard. There's none of you in me. And like, I only took you in because I needed a sweet face for people to buy oil or whatever.
I'm a
whatever
family
he says
man.
there, something to that effect. But
Yes.
but I don't know. I think at that point there's a lot of just bluster going on because you do see so much genuine sensitivity early on. But it is a question. It does remain a question because it's like how much of that is premeditated. I don't know.
No,
That's true.
I like the read, but I'm sorry, I don't see Daniel Plainview as that type of person.
You're going cynical on this one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't. Every movement in this movie, every movement in Daniel Plainview's Daniel Plainview's life is executed to perfection. It's executed to the finest, most refined degree because that's the type of man he is, and he can't be any other type of man. Even when trying to accept his brother, you can tell there was a struggle there. Like he was like really wanting to believe it, but the whole time there was something in the back of his head that made him question. He can't ever trust. He can't ever open himself to another person. He's totally closed off. That's why he's a true to form sociopath because he's unable to open himself up. And so he's just telling the truth at the end of the movie. He's unveiling all his cards to everybody, to Paul, to his son. You're a tool. You're not my son. I don't want you. I never wanted you. I used you. Bye. Write off your money. You're not mine. And then when Paul comes, he's like, seepage. I drink your milkshake. I
The
suck
legendary milkshake scene.
Yeah.
And
I suck it up.
so, he's being fully honest. He could have told Paul that at any point in his life. He could have wrote Paul a letter and said, just letting you know, this has happened.
BT
Matter of
dubs.
fact, as a businessman.
Yeah.
But he's not that kind of man. He's a vindictive bastard. So for him, he waited. He waited. He has that kind of patience. He sat there and waited until the day he knew Paul Sunday was going to come to him for money because he knew he was a fuck up.
I think
And he waited until that moment to unveil that there was no oil to get the most reaction out of it.
I think that there's that the second half of the movie, he does that specifically like the long con type of game because he is so shamed and defeated when... Okay, so another moment where he looks very vulnerable to me is when Bandy catches him the morning after he murders his brother. And like he's staring at him, and Bandy is an interesting like paragon or symbol of religion in this movie. He's like also very quiet. He like owns his ranch. He's resistant, to like the change and everything like that. And when he finds Daniel, he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to turn you in or anything." He's like, "I just want you to go and be saved and ask for forgiveness." And it's such a weird moment where like Daniel has like no material economy to negotiate with this man, and he's like, "Fine, fuck it." And then when
He's like, I'll give you $5,000.
yeah, exactly.
10,000. He'll do anything except get fucking baptized.
I know. But then when Paul does that to him, I agree with you, Jeff. From that moment on, it's like, okay, this is how it's going to be. Like, I'll get you in fucking a few decades here. Like,
Yeah, they have like a back and forth because Paul visits him in the muddy field and he just like slaps
love
him
that,
around
yeah.
and shoves him in the fucking slime. And then Paul gets his semi-revenge by like humiliating Daniel in front of the church audience.
It's just a
But
clash
boy,
of
does
egos.
Daniel gets the last shot when he
Yes.
murders him with a bowling ball.
that's a strike,
Bowling
baby.
pin.
Bowling pin, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a strike, baby, says Alex.
Oh my god. It's just a clash of egos. It's a war of egos. It's a back and forth. You get one, I get one. Now, Paul, I hate Paul Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's one of my most hated characters in the pantheon of hateable
Pretty
characters.
loathsome, yeah.
He's just, and this is credit to Paul Dano's acting ability. I've always thought he was a great actor, and he really proves it here as just encompassing this disgustingly cheap and just shallow human being that only needs self-satisfaction. But I mean,
I think it's the sorry, the Paul Dano character, he plays two brothers. I think the one that we see the whole time is Eli. You keep saying Paul, but I think it's Eli because I just in my brain it's like Eli.
Oh,
Eli.
you're right. My apologies.
Daniel Day-Lewis calling him Eli.
Yeah, I have it. Yeah, I have it on my notes
that
written
was
the other way.
in my brain, just hovering at the periphery. I was like, "Is that right?" So
No, sorry. Paul is the brother that originally visits them.
Got it.
The
Yes.
older brother, yes, and
Yeah.
Eli
Okay, you're
is
right,
the sycophant. And my apologies. You're right. I have that written wrong in my notes. I don't know how I got that. Well, I mean, it's because it's the same actor.
yeah, it was an easy mistake.
Yeah. So just like it's just this ability to really play it calm, play it patiently, and get your comeuppance at the end. I don't think Daniel Day-Lewis has any moments of true vulnerability in this movie. I think when he's confronted by Bandy, it's just panic. He's just like, okay, I can't negotiate. I can't use any. Like Alex is a great read. He does nothing to negotiate with.
There's he's never sorry. He's never truly sorry about anything.
He's only doing things right because he has to do them.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I mean, he's a beautifully reprehensible character.
Yeah, so Daniel Day-Lewis does the method acting thing. He stays in character, like in Lincoln, Offset. People would call him Mr. Lincoln, stuff like that. And I every time I see this movie, I must think how crazy it was for him to inhabit this character for months and months, and he prepared for it for over a year. And not only that, but when you're on set and people are calling you by your character's name, his character's name in this film is Daniel.
I know.
That's his real name.
I know.
So it's like, I wonder how much of it, like how it fucked with his identity. You know what I mean? Because method acting, especially people like this who go so deep into it, they have trouble getting out of it.
Yeah.
Especially a character like this.
When he won an Oscar, I believe, for Lincoln, he's won so many awards that I can't remember which speech this was specifically, but he thanked his wife, and he said she has lived with all of these characters 24/7 when I come home from like the filming shoot or like the shooting of the day, and she has to like deal with them at home. Like, could you imagine cooking dinner and like getting ready in the morning for Daniel fucking Plainview?
Just hanging out with Daniel Plainview,
like watching Jeopardy
in like
and
a
shit.
family setting.
No, it's just like I imagine sitting at the breakfast table, and she's like making breakfast and like drinking her coffee, and you have like this like tight knit vested hat on, reading the paper with that glower. It's just, it would be so. I mean, like I said earlier, he's truly terrifying in this movie,
yeah.
and I mean,
It's a psychological horror film.
he reminds me of an abusive father. He reminds me of this kind of, and he, to a degree, is a very abusive father. He's a very abusive father, maybe in a very subtle way to HW, because there are times where I will concede that, he's holding HW after he's deafened and kind of murmuring to him and humming to him, and, giving him milk laced with whiskey to put him asleep so that he could like actually work. There's like the back and forth of like being an abusive father that's working too much and also trying to love your son in a way that will show him. And I think the big turn is when he sends his son away. I think that's when he loses that tool and starts to fall apart.
That is true, actually. Like his like facade, he can't be the family man kind of guy anymore to persuade people.
And people are calling him out on that, the fellow prospectors, and he's getting violently aggressive at them.
I'm going to come into your house and slit your throat. Don't tell me how to raise my son. You're like, damn, bro.
I know.
It's so aggressive.
I also love how we only ever see him consume steak and vodka.
Yep.
Really?
He needs meat and clear liquors.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize that.
He might have had something else to drink, but especially at the end, he's just like sitting there like a rabid animal chewing that old steak and like just chugging vodka.
I guess he had a milkshake right at the end. In a sense.
Oh yeah, he drinks a milkshake as well.
But it's hard. It's really hard talking about this movie. I know we're doing like a director spotlight.
We could do a whole episode on it.
It's hard talking about this movie without Daniel Day-Lewis in it. And if anyone has the time who's listening, I would say go watch the Charlie Rose interview between Paul Thomas Anderson with Daniel Day-Lewis, because Daniel Day-Lewis rarely gives interviews. Paul Thomas Anderson isn't the most like exuberant person either, so it's a good moment to get like a really deep down, like in-depth interview with the two of them and ask them like the dynamics that were going through their mind. Also, quick mention, I think that Daniel Day-Lewis is in nearly every single minute of film in this movie, which is just insane. Like, besides maybe some of the landscape
it really
shots.
Doesn't leave him.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave his character.
Yeah, speaking of landscape, right before we move on, I would be remiss, and we mentioned this a little bit briefly earlier, but we talked so much about the acting, but this is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, so you can expect lots of the technical stuff we've been talking about earlier. Beautiful shots, beautiful single-length shots, uninterrupted vistas that will just like literally take your breath away after seeing this movie 400 times.
All the technical elements of the score. This began Anderson's longtime partnership with Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, who we talked about last time, who would go on to score all of Anderson's subsequent films, except for one. Tom York did one, but he's also from Radiohead, so... and don't worry, it doesn't sound like Radiohead.
Yeah.
I mean, Radiohead is a good band, in my opinion. But
this movie is droning. The score is so droning.
Yeah, it's a lot of ambience. It's a lot of
long strings that are like, lots of percussion, lots of strings that are like drawn out for a long time.
Very dissonant too. It
almost horror movie.
Yeah, the stick kind of beat that it has during the whole oil derrick explosion is tremendous. It just bores into you. It's like just clawing its way deeper and deeper. Yeah, it's a gorgeous film in every single way. It's a profoundly interesting meditation on man, and I don't know. Apropos, I brought this up last time, but the concept of Anderson trying to write the great American novel. This is based on a novel called Oil by Upton Sinclair, but from what I understand, it veers quite drastically away from that. So it's very much a based on kind of thing.
Yeah. Which I've not read. I don't know if you guys have read.
No, I haven't. Little Upton Sinclair callback, by the way.
Yeah, seriously.
Right. For a Mank episode.
Little Bill Nye the Science Guy callback.
So yeah, I mean, if he's trying to do that here, I suppose it's just getting into the weird dark psychology at the core of like what's going on in America at the time.
Yeah, this isn't your Daniel Boone like American frontier story. This is a whole different level.
To satisfy the video game reference for the
episode, nice.
Very much if everyone has ever played Red Dead Redemption 2,
hell yeah.
It's very much the same kind of tone of character about a reprehensible person. And it's very much the same type of aesthetic.
Well, anything more to say before we move on? I mean, we could talk forever.
Yeah. You could do 2 episodes on this movie.
Yeah. For the sake of brevity, relative brevity, this will be a honker of an episode, I think.
But I guess if you haven't seen the movie, to anyone listening, just why? What are you doing? Like, stop everying you're doing now.
Or watch it.
Yeah.
Or you could just watch it, and then
I'm usually the asshole. Come on. It's okay. It takes some of the heat away from me complaining about douchey podcasts.
Definitely one of the best.
Watch it. It's one of the best movies ever made, in every way. So 5 years later, 2012, we have The Master, which was the original impetus for this episode before we ended up expanding it into the full-blown director spotlight because PTA deserves it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let Alex handle this one.
So this was actually this was my choice after Funny Games in the rotation to try and make up for my lost credentials.
Regain the respect of your
colleagues. Yeah,
exactly.
And I didn't want to do There Will Be Blood specifically because it's such like a behemoth of a movie, culturally, critically, whatever you want to say about it, any superlative you want to attach to it. But I feel like with this next attempt in The Master, it was I don't want to say it was refreshing, but along the same line and like tone of There Will Be Blood, there's a story there that is just a little more populated with different characters, different ideals and things and whatnot. And basically, to give a quick summary, the movie's about like an alcoholic, desperately alcoholic. He'll drink anything. He'll put anything into his body to have some type of head change. In Joaquin Phoenix, who's a World War II vet, stumbles into like life in California into the late 1940s and 50s and is trying to kind of find his way. And he's in San Francisco at one point, just drunkenly and slovenly walking along a dock, and he wanders onto this boat that is having this little like dinner party or something, or it's like a regular party with cocktails and shit. And he ends up falling into this group or this organization, we can call it a cult, led by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's a joy to watch in this film. And him and Joaquin Phoenix, basically, I would say the movie is about their homosocial relationship, and I mean that in the least sexual way possible. It's about these two men like vibing off of each other almost. And Philip Seymour Hoffman takes Joaquin Phoenix like almost under his wing as like, I don't even know how to put this, but there are disciples who follow people based on like, oh, I've read all your work, like I'm so into you and things like that. But then almost like in Boogie Nights, when Burt Reynolds' character walks into the dishwashing scene and meets Mark Wahlberg's character, it's like, oh, I have to be with you. Like we have to be together in this journey. Like, you are everything I was looking for without ever saying one word to me. And that is the exact same, like, dynamic almost that we have in this film. To end the summary, it just goes on to this little journey and gets a little wild.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, Jeff was talking last time about how this theme of like fatherhood or parenthood crops up in a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson movies, and even though the two lead actors are, I want to say, pretty close to the same age, maybe Hoffman's a little older, there is a strong father figure dynamic going on
Definitely,
there.
Yeah.
I believe. It's also worth mentioning that this is loosely based upon Scientology. So the Philip Seymour Hoffman you can basically think of as L. Ron Hubbard, who's just spouting a bunch of, pseudo-spiritual nonsense and making shit up as he goes along, but also kind of believing it, maybe. It's hard to say. Yeah, this is a very weird movie. I ended it, and I was like, wow, I really enjoyed watching that. I have almost no idea why. It was a very obtuse movie. It had, it's great to look at, of course. All of his films are. And reveling in the performances is especially strong. It'll be strong again in Inherent Vice, which is even more obtuse. But yeah, I almost didn't know what to think about this movie, except that I liked it. But I feel like I need to see it again. I don't know. Jeff, what did you think?
I loved this movie. So this was my first time seeing The Master, and it was really up my alley. It's like, I love Paul Thomas Anderson's films, all of them, but this one in particular was very much
especially Punch Drunk Love.
Yes, especially Punch Drunk Love.
He didn't.
It's a good movie. My train of thought. God damn you every time. So yeah, this is a fantastic movie. That's my kind of exploration into the mind of, again, an egotistical person, but in the way that is almost opposite of Daniel Plainview, somebody who knows that they're full of shit. Like Lancaster Dodd knows that he's full of shit. He never admits it, but he knows. And there's that scene where he's sitting at his desk and he's drinking and he's kind of has his hand over his head and he's almost crying. And there's this soft light on him. For me, I took that as this revelation of oh man, I am truly a phony and a fake. And it was such an impactful scene for me because it was just so oh wow, this guy doesn't drink his own Kool-Aid. But I saw a lot of really great themes that just popped out immediately, abandonment. Freddie Quell is somebody who I don't I don't know how much they really go into his background. From my only one watch of the movie, but when you leave the military, some people have a little bit of separation anxiety because they were so beholden to this machine of the military. They always had somebody to report to, had a place to sleep, had a purpose. And you can see that Freddie Quayle's looking for a purpose. And he's missing that in his life. He's just wandering, and he just wanders into this
Wandering
boat.
around, drinking jet fuel.
Seriously.
mixing jet fuel with like sangria.
Missing photo processing chemicals.
I've heard people do that with like that kind of stuff, or like boat fuel. It's like there's all I don't know. It's fucking ridiculous.
It was a thing that they did, that soldiers did, some of them. I can't imagine it's very good for you.
Yeah, I don't imagine you'll live a long life drinking any kind of jet fuel or fuel of any kind. Please don't do that.
It's a weird combo of characters because they're so different. Philip Seymour Hoffman is so meticulous and mannered, and Joaquin Phoenix has this wildness and this sexuality. Like he just gives no fucks. You have a great scene of him jerking off in the ocean.
Yeah. He is beast-like, even more than Plainview, I would say. Like,
I love that. That's such a good one.
He's like an animal wandering from waterhole to waterhole of alcohol.
That scene in this movie.
He sits down at like a dinner and he just writes, "You want to fuck?" and hands it to a girl.
Dude, I fucking love Joaquin Phoenix in this movie. He's so good.
He's really good, yeah.
Because he's somebody who just doesn't give a shit at all. He's lost all inhibition. He is almost alcoholism incarnate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, Alex, if you were to distill this movie, what would you say it's about?
I would say it's about manipulation. The emotional manipulation of a man who seems to be kind of simple. I don't want to say Joaquin Phoenix is simple, but in this film, he's very juvenile. He's like a child. And if you go back to the reading of fatherhood, it's like a father manipulating a child in a way. Until, maybe the child rises up and decides to abandon it. But he never, it's not like a clash of egos like in the previous film we were talking about, right? It's more like...
No, it's very much a relationship.
Yeah, and it's like, how far will the tolerance of Lancaster Dodd... Like, how high is Joaquin Phoenix's tolerance for this bullshittery, And,
or their tolerance for each other, even.
Yeah, 100%, And they both, bring each other into their arena for a moment and live there, but then it slowly becomes extremely uncomfortable, and they have to just, expel each other, right, from their lives. And yeah, so I would say that I always watch this movie and I think of the way that Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is just manipulating Joaquin Phoenix for the first part of it. He helps him whip up his little recipes of booze and whatnot, and partakes in that with him. But I mean, obviously there's manipulation going on a bunch of different levels. And I love the scene with Lancaster Dodd's son, played by an actor who I can't think of right now, but he's in Breaking Bad.
Jesse Plemons.
Okay, got it. He's also in an episode of Black Mirror that's really good. But this guy, when they talk to each other, right? And he's like, this is all just a fucking scam. That's his real son. His real son is like, I have been dealing with this since I was a child. This dude is fucking insane, and I just go along with all of it because. And Joaquin Phoenix is so disturbed by this conversation to the point where I believe he takes out that anger on someone else later on who also doubts the efficacy or the truth of what Dodd is preaching.
There's a funny real life mirror to this, a little anecdote. Paul Thomas Anderson screened this movie for his buddy Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise got really mad at this scene.
Oh,
and apparently
no
they
way.
exchanged words.
Oh, dear.
Why?
Scientology.
Because Tom Cruise is a big old Scientologist.
No, I know that, but I mean, he's saying that this fictional cult that the movie is part of is bullshit, not Scientology.
Yeah, but it's
very heavily implied.
I understand
it's
that
Scientology.
it's not like you don't need to be a genius to see what he's talking about here. But I mean, it's he's not saying it's Scientology. So it's this is just I get it, but to And we all know that this is a very Tom Cruise reaction, but it just seems very sensitive.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
it seems overly sensitive. We know Tom Cruise is a very overly sensitive person, so that makes sense.
All those Scientologists are sensitive about it.
But
they'll sue the shit out of you.
Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't, like, he's not saying anything. I don't know, that's just a weird reaction. It's almost like you're full of shit because you're getting, like, angry. It's like the Daniel Plainview thing when he's getting angry at the prospectors. It's like, you're full of shit. You feel ashamed, so you're going to lash out.
Yeah, that's true, actually. There's some type of, like, almost like averting or avoiding the responsibility by being like Tom Cruise might have seen himself, like, in this film.
Exactly.
Just like, no, fuck you.
Maybe he's just a true believer. I don't know what Tom Cruise's psychology is. I don't think he's a great critical thinker.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that fact that Christian Bale, like, everyone knows about this, that Christian Bale based the character in American Psycho off Tom Cruise.
Holy shit. I did
Really?
not know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Off of real life Tom Cruise?
Yeah, so he saw the interview with Tom Cruise and on Oprah when he was, like, going crazy.
Wasn't that way after American Psycho?
I don't know. He saw an interview with Tom Cruise, he says. And maybe it wasn't the Oprah one. He saw an interview with Tom Cruise. I think it was way before that, yeah. And he said that there was this weird, like, overtly friendliness, but with nothing behind the eyes. And he said he used that as inspiration for the character in American Psycho.
Interesting. I also want to give props to Amy Adams in this movie.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think she's fantastic and she operates in a weird space that I need to see this movie again to, like, fully say my feelings about it, but she's sort of like, I think she inhabits this like nexus around which all these guys swirl. There's something about her in this movie where she feels more central maybe to what's going on than you might think, and her performance is also fantastic. She really holds up against these titans.
I will say maybe on a rewatch, because on my rewatches, she has just grown into, like, one of the more prominent characters in the film. The first time I saw it, I was just so, like, focused on Hoffman and Phoenix doing their thing together that, like, I just saw her as kind of, like, either an obstacle for the narrative or just, like, a problem for both of the two other characters to work out. But yeah, on rewatches and things like that, she's Lady Macbethian, I will say, in her positioning in the story.
So interesting you say that, Alex. Oh my God. It's because
that's a great way to put it.
It's very reminiscent of the story that it's about, because I don't know if you guys know that much about Scientology, but the L. Ron Hubbard's wife, or no, not L. Ron Hubbard, sorry, but the current president of Scientology, whoever it is, his wife, like, disappeared under really mysterious circumstances.
What?
And, like, he's never been prosecuted for it.
Jesus.
But no one's ever seen her again. She just, like, disappeared out of nowhere. So there's this very, like, weird thing going on where, like, it's like, where'd she go? And nobody, like, talks about it. He's never been, like, investigated. No one's investigated her disappearance.
You gotta be careful, man. They're gonna come after us now. all hail Zenu.
Yeah. So there's an element of that in Amy Adams' performance where she is really, like, this larger than life character. Lancaster Dodd is really at home beholden to his wife. Like, she really holds the keys to the castle.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that scene was like, damn.
What scene, Alex? Describe it in detail.
So Philip Seymour Hoffman is, like, brushing his teeth, washing his face in the mirror. Amy Adams, his wife, comes up behind him, and she's a little perturbed by the fact that him and Joaquin Phoenix are, like, making and getting drunk on this hooch. And she slowly just starts, giving him a hand job, and is like, what does she call it? No more. Does she say hooch? No more booze or something?
No more booze,
okay.
I think.
So through the thrusting of her hand job, it's just like she's, like, giving instruction to Philip Seymour Hoffman, and he slowly succumbs to not only, like, the orgasmic, but, like, just the weight of her authority while she's doing this to him. And then it ends very quickly, and she, like, washes her hands and just leaves. And he's just left there in his post-orgasmic, like, stuff, I guess. He's just like...
It's a really gross scene.
Yeah, it's a really, really intense scene.
You're like, I love Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm not sure I needed to see his coitus face.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that
But,
I could have gone without that.
It's like because he's like older. He's like red,
I know.
sweating, and it's just like you can like feel it. You're like, ugh.
Yeah, this movie is like such a representation of, like, I know I talked about in There Will Be Blood, like the ego versus ego, but this is really id versus ego in this movie. Phoenix is definitely the id, you know, the inhibition. I mean, the ambition, the forward thinking, like, you know, the movement, the forward progress, and Hoffman is definitely the super ego.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, the very self-centered and self-controlled part of the body and part of the mind, excuse me. And it's like these two kind of components of the psyche fighting each other back and forth, and they can't really exist in the same space for too long, like you were saying, before they have to repel each other. There's a lot of psychological exploration in this movie that I really like. And I wanted to ask a question. While this is obviously steeped in Scientology, I also caught a lot of just general cult references, and I wanted to see if you guys caught that as well. Like, they kind of throw out different references to different cults.
Do they?
Did they talk about Charlie Manson?
They did. Well, there's one reference to the Manson cult that I heard.
I don't remember the other cult speak specifically, but I think it like the Scientology thing is there in the background, but more so it is about a cult leader in that realm. You know, it's about the relationship between these two guys. But if you want to draw the camera back, it is about cults, you know, and how this sort of operates. So I think it is more broad than just Scientology, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to see if you were getting that same feeling as well.
I think Paul Thomas Anderson would appreciate that rating too. I know that he gets kind of upset when people talk about this movie and constantly like bring up the Scientology aspect for it, because obviously he put that in the film, but I don't think that's what he was trying to do when he sat down to write
exactly.
it.
When I watched this movie, I didn't think of it in that way. And
it speaks to why it's such an interesting film, and like why his films are really interesting broadly is because you can't just be like, this is about this. I mean, I asked Alex to distill it, but that's just one reading you can have.
Yeah.
You know, same with Jeff, and I love the reading about the ego and the id.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I didn't think about that either. But it's like, this movie is doing so many things, and there's so many little like webs going on beneath the surface. And it's to the point where like saying it's just about one thing does it a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
And yeah,
It's an exploration of a lot of different ideas, and then also, for the most part, just a character piece about these two men and their relationship together.
and that part is so good that's all it even needed to be. It's so interesting and subtle and weird.
It's representative of Paul Thomas Anderson as a writer and a filmmaker, because he's able to do both, and that's so brilliant. Is that he can focus on this amazing relationship without any context really about these two characters, but then he gets to add the context that flavors it and spices it and makes it fulfilling without overburdening the movie with unnecessary exposition or detail. It's perfect. It's a really great balance of great filmmaking and great writing.
I'd love to see his attempt at writing a novel. I don't know what his like prose style is. Maybe it's terrible. I have no idea, but I'd be interested to see. That's all.
He's
I'll say.
definitely
It'd be a very visual novel.
right. You can tell that he reads a
Yeah,
lot.
absolutely. Well, there's just like speaking of the cult thing, it's just there was a very big nod when I believe he calls Freddy, Joaquin Phoenix, a pig fuck.
Yeah.
Was it him?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, when he's calling out, because Freddy's like calling him out, basically, and he calls him a pig fuck and tells him to leave. And that was just very reminiscent to me of the Manson family cult.
Was he saying that to Freddy or that guy who crashed?
I think it was
the
that
party?
guy, actually.
Yeah, it was
I think
that
I
guy.
was seeing that.
Who
Yeah.
asked
You know
the
that
questions.
Philip Seymour Hoffman improvised that line.
Yeah, you could definitely tell. which,
Rest in peace.
which takes a little bit away from my reading of it, because if he improv'd it, then he probably just was trying to like create like a very genuine on the spot insult.
Paul Thomas Anderson teasered out some of his hair before that take to get him angry.
Oh, that's hilarious. Because, honestly, that scene is like really I think one of the first times you see him like break his like super calm and collected mold of like being a spiritual leader, right? And he's just brought right back down to earth, and he's almost acting in that sense like the id. Like he's just giving into all of this inhibition and just bestially lashing out at this guy. And then slowly like the blood drains from his face and he comes back to normal. But yeah, the redness in Philip Seymour Hoffman's face in this movie when he's like excited is awesome to see.
Yeah, it's also, I think I'd have to look at his filmography, but I think it's one of the last great Philip Seymour Hoffman movies before he sadly OD'd.
Such a loss.
Yeah, definitely.
It really was.
Yeah,
I put him up there with Daniel Day-Lewis as one of the best actors of this or any generation.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And then in a totally different way too, right? Like it's cool to see people like Philip Seymour Hoffman doing his thing, because it shows you that there's great and like refined and just superb acting outside of certain roles. You don't always have to be like the brooding, dark movie star, which I'm not saying that Daniel Day-Lewis is. He just plays that extremely well. Philip Seymour Hoffman gives a little bit of world and like earthness, I guess is what I will say, to acting. Like he's
there's a lot of warmth in his performances. Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis's performances are very calculated. There's warmth if there needs to be.
Yeah.
Whereas in Philip Seymour Hoffman, I think
there's a lot of warmth in Lincoln.
Yes,
that is definitely true.
I think it's calculated. Whereas I think it's a natural thing from just
Hoffman's
Hoffman's
I get what you're
appearance.
saying. It's more
just his appearance, and
him.
he has a more jolly-like appearance, and his characters tend to have a little more emotional range.
Even in Boogie Nights, like if you watch his character Scotty during the whole thing, in relation to people like John C. Reilly's character and Mark Wahlberg's character, I don't know. There's something about him that is just so like, it's just vulnerable, I guess, or like warmth is a perfect way to put it, I think.
Yeah, you'll see that again in like Capote and Synecdoche, New York.
Capote, man. Wow. I haven't thought about that movie in a while. I was all over it when it was doing its Oscar thing, because he was like,
It's fantastic. He's great.
Oh, yeah.
He's Truman Capote. It's crazy.
But I'm glad you guys liked it, at least.
I greatly enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. Although I mean, you can't beat There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
So maybe that goes without saying. But yeah.
Yeah, There Will Be Blood is definitely the summit of the mountain.
Yeah, Boogie Nights is close for me.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But we got a weird one coming up here.
Holy shit.
One I love.
Holy.
2014, Inherent Vice. Based on, yes, okay. Inherent Vice is a movie that's about something. I'm sure of that much. It's based on a novel by Thomas Pynchon, whose books are legendarily obtuse and difficult. So I guess it's faithful. I'm not sure. Joaquin Phoenix plays a private investigator who's also this hippie stoner in 70s Los Angeles. So we're back to Paul Thomas Anderson in his native habitat. So Joaquin Phoenix will go to a location, talk to a character who tells him the names of more characters, and then he goes on to another location to talk to another character. And I had very little idea of what was happening the entire movie, but I really enjoyed watching it, which is interesting. The combination of filmmaking, acting, and score made it super interesting. And it's also one of his funny movies. Jeff and I watched this together, and we decided it was the Joaquin Phoenix reaction shot movie. The way, like, his reaction shots to these characters are hilarious. He almost feels like an audience surrogate to me a lot of the time, because he's almost just as confused as you are with this nonsense plot that we're trying to wade through. And like he has his little notebook, and someone will tell him the name of something, and he writes down something in Mexican, something in Spanish.
Paranoia alert.
Yeah. So Jeff, why don't you explain to us the plot of Inherent Vice?
Oh, thanks.
And please be as detailed as possible.
All right. So, Inherent Vice. Jesus. I feel. I got this. So this is a movie that took me a little time. I had to sleep on this movie. Me and Jesse watched this movie and Phantom Thread right after one another, just to kind of finish out this Paul Thomas Anderson-a-thon. Mm-hmm. And Inherent Vice, we were both kind of checking out by the end, but not checking out of the movie, just the plot. And we were more just like reveling in how fun this movie was. So Inherent Vice follows Larry Doc Sportello, who is played by Joaquin Phoenix, who is a
Doc.
Private, they'd call him Doc for the most part, and he prefers that. And so he's a private investigator who is the least professional nor private, like just reliable looking private investigator you could ever see. I mean, I guess it is the 1970s. So he's got the big mutton chops and the long hair, but he's very disheveled and doesn't really look like he's got all his shit together. But he is visited by an ex-girlfriend who has recently left him for somebody else. And he didn't expect to see her again. She comes to him pleading for help. She is...
To do something. Even after the first scene... Even after the first scene, we paused it. I was like, wait, Jeff, what's going on? And you're like, I'm not sure, but I think it's this.
I'm telling you the plot as I best interpreted it, and I'm getting towards the end of what I could have interpreted.
Okay.
So bear with me,
we
folks.
don't need to go super deep.
It's not going to go that much farther. So basically, he's searching for something for his ex-girlfriend, and then she disappears. So then the investigation turns towards finding her. Where did she go specifically? She's kind of involved in this seedy underbelly real estate agent kind of world, and that's as far as I can really get. Josh Brolin fillets a banana. Owen Wilson's in it. This is a movie where characters would appear and you'd hear their name before the actor would come on screen. So you'd be like, okay. And then some unbelievably famous actor would appear, and you're like, okay, sure.
You're like, oh,
this
it's
person
Josh
might as well
Brolin.
be in this movie.
It's Benicio del Toro.
God, yeah.
It's Owen Wilson. It's Martin Short.
It's Reese
You're
Witherspoon.
Like, it's Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, this movie just goes fucking
like, sure,
nuts,
why
man.
not? Who's next?
And I will say, to cap it all off, like, while this movie has many characters, and like we just said, all played by really great and brilliant actors, there's one character that I really loved. She's a side character. Her name is Sortilege. And she's kind of our narrator, our unreliable narrator. She's played by Joanna Newsom, somebody I don't know their acting career very well. And I just really loved her performance. She had this peaceful, calm delivery to the narrative, whatever it was, and to her own lines, because we do also see her in person. And she kind of was the moment of respite. She was the campfire, if you will, before heading out to another adventure of Joaquin Phoenix reacting to everyone doing wild shit.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, I had no idea what was happening in the movie, but like you, Jeff, after sleeping on it, I realized, like, the less I cared about that, because I'm just, like, reveling in basically the comedy of these performances. It's an extremely funny movie. And you get to see Josh Brolin literally gag on a frozen banana. I think we both checked out at the exact same moment of the plot, which was funny because, like, they were saying dialogue and it was like an hour and a half into this 2.5 hour movie, and my brain was so strained trying to figure out the logistics of this plot and all these names, to where they were saying plot dialogue and my brain just literally did not compute it at all. And I think I made a noise, and then Jeff laughed.
And then I turned to you and I went, blurgity blurgity blurg. and then you laughed. You were like, oh yeah. And then we were at the same moment realized that we had no idea what was fuck was going on. But Alex, what did you think of Inherent Vice?
I will say I definitely agree with you guys that it's his funniest movie. It's actually like pretty hilarious, and it relies on a few different like methods of comedy. Sometimes it feels almost like slapsticky, like, you know, even with the deep throating of the frozen banana, or him getting bonked on the head at like a sex massage parlor. Like part of it feels like
the pussy eating special. You're like, wait, I thought I was gonna get this.
There's so many scenes that you will remember after watching this movie that you'll forget and will make you happy.
So, without bringing up this other director to muddy the PTA waters, but both of them see themselves as contemporaries. This is the most Quentin Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson movie, in my opinion. It almost feels like it exists in some of the same environments. Some of the music soundtrack choices are very interesting in the background, like old pop music that's like at a low volume while the characters are talking quickly to each other. And then the narrator, actually. Every time I heard the narrator's voice, I thought of Uma Thurman doing her thing in Kill Bill every once in a while. And she does it from that, you know, third point of view, like, oh, the bride thought this. And in this movie, it's like, she's like, sortilege? She's like,
yeah.
Oh, Doc thought this, and Doc thought this. You can tell it's adapted from a novel or a book, right? I thought this movie was like almost Paul Thomas Anderson's way of being like, okay, I made 2 movies that basically gave you 6 characters, and There Will Be Blood and The Master. You combine them, you have like people you can count on your hand who you really know in those films. And this movie, he's like, we're just gonna go fucking all out. We're like, I'm gonna have so many different characters in this. Like Martin Short turns up at one point, and I was just like,
with an amazing performance, by the way, shows up and absolutely knocks it out of the park.
And I actually really, really liked this movie. I need to watch it definitely again. And there were moments like you guys where I was like checking out here and there, but I think I love the reading of Joaquin Phoenix being an audience surrogate the most, because it definitely felt like that. And like that reaction when he looks at that woman's like baby that was born to heroin addiction.
Oh, she looks at the photograph, he's just like,
and then just snaps right back in.
Yeah,
there's a lot of weird snap humor in this that just like, it's very meta almost. It's outside. Like nobody acknowledges it in the world.
Dude, the Joaquin Phoenix reacting to things. When Josh Brolin comes in at the end and starts eating his marijuana.
That's one of the best scenes in cinema. Just Josh Brolin comes up, takes a puff of his joint, eats it, then just eats handfuls of what can only be described as like oregano weed. Just mostly clippings.
He picks up the tray and just dumps it into his mouth, and you have the reaction shot of Joaquin Phoenix just like, it's like somebody watching a hallucination.
Yeah. He's like he's like staring up at him. And to be honest, Josh Brolin's character, Bigfoot, I almost thought like that name made sense because he's so outside of whatever plot exists in this movie. He's almost like the unwitting antagonist. Like there's a scene where Joaquin, he gets pulled in the police department, and Josh Brolin's character plays a detective, an actual police detective, and kind of they have a tenuous relationship. They kind of hate each other, but are kind of friends at the same time. And so he tells him, like, stay out of this, you know, you're a fuck up. Basically insults him. Joaquin Phoenix leaves, continues the investigation, and proceeds to leave a place that he was investigating. And Josh Brolin's character's just out there and just proceeds to beat the living shit out of him.
Oh, yeah, that scene was
I
weird.
never understood the context
Neither
of that
did I. When they're in the tie room, right? And he's like gonna hook up with Luz, or Luz is like trying to hook up with him. And she's like, oh, I gotta go, sorry. And then he like says to himself before he leaves, he like hears something or something. He's like, oh, Bigfoot. And then you see him like, I don't even know what his escape attempt was, but he just like jumps on the hood of the police car, and then he just kicks him to death, like not to death, excuse me. He just
I
beats him.
have no
I
idea.
know.
I thought maybe it was like a displacement thing. Like maybe we'd get the context of that later on.
No, they
Yeah.
never reference it again.
Maybe I'm gonna say maybe they did. I feel like that scene came back for a moment, but
They
I
could've,
was so
yeah.
confused about the plot at that point and like how things connected. Because Josh Brolin is connected with the plot. There's something about like, oh, it was his partner, and then he steals a bunch of heroin.
Yes.
But I have zero idea how that tracks with the narrative. Zero.
You know,
Apparently, his partner was murdered by somebody that the real estate company was involved with dealing drugs, and then that's why
Blargety,
he's
blargety, blargety.
it's blargety blargety blarg. You know, like
to give an idea to
There's no
anyone listening to like
context.
the craziness of this film, when I first started it, because I hadn't seen it, I watched it this past week and a half. I thought that my streaming service had started the film halfway through the movie. And I was like, oh, this is all fun.
Nice.
And so I got up from my chair and everything, because I have like this little way that I watch movies in my room. I like sit in a chair or lie in my bed. And I got up and I was like huffing and puffing, because I was like, God damn fucking streaming service, you know, I'm going to have to fix this. And I realized it was just the very beginning of the movie. And I was like, okay, fuck it. Like, this is it.
That's such a perfect way to describe what coming into this movie feels like.
Yeah, because like I said, after the first scene, we paused it and talked to each other, trying to figure out what was happening already. After the first scene, to me, it felt. You mentioned Tarantino. To me, this felt very Coen Brothers.
Oh, that's another one I was going to say. Damn it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah, it has this wry humor to it, and I don't know, just the way it was shot, I guess. I'm not sure exactly why, but I definitely got Coen vibes. Maybe also just having this panoply of actors who like they're engaged in telling a narrative, but they're also playing off each other in all these wonderful ways that you see in Coen movies.
It reminded me of Waking Life. If anyone's ever seen Waking Life,
I have not.
it was
That's a crazy comparison.
yes, not in plot. Well, Waking Life is also equally bonkers as far as plot, but it's about like the fact that you just have these characters that exist in these scenes, and they're in other scenes, but they tend to only exist in that moment in that scene, if that makes any sense. Like, it's almost like that scene is the whole movie, and then we move on. It's like, holy shit, where'd we go? Like, you were so invested in that one environment. They set the tone very well. And then Paul Thomas Anderson just takes these hard lefts the whole movie. You're like, oh shit, okay, all right, we're going this way now. And it's so interesting. Like, I mean, I can only use an example of the brothel. Like, the brothel scene just threw me for a fucking loop. I was like, okay, what is happening now? Like, we're at this brothel that's very... They're not, like, they don't know the definition of tongue-in-cheek in this brothel.
Wait.
They know the definition of tongue in box.
We were
for sure.
laughing at it because what was it called? It's like this tiny dingy place out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like the Pussy Cafe or something, and you're like, "Oh yes, that's where I want to go."
It was so blatant, and then like the menu was like the Pussy Eaters special, and it was just like it was so out. And that scene felt very Tarantino to me. The humor was very Tarantino. Like I definitely agree with that read, and the colors. The palette of this movie. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix walks around the whole movie looking like fucking Serpico.
You are in the 70s in this movie. The soundtrack, everything. It's glorious.
For a moment, I was waiting for like Dirk Diggler or like Burt Reynolds' character to just like pop his head out of like a fucking quick corner on the street or something.
Yeah, it had that very that color in
the LA Valley.
Anderson, yeah, very LA. No, it was very reminiscent of that time, that world that he captures so beautifully.
If I had to distill it down to like a trope, a narrative trope, not in the bad sense of the term, but like, does it feel like you guys like it's the typical like detective or police officer is trying to uncover what he thinks is like just a simple case of disappearance, and then it just like blows up into this huge network of like all these going ons, you know? Like I'm thinking like North by Northwest maybe, or like what's another movie that does that? Like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo kind of stuff. Like, oh, there's actually
play
this
it
thing.
Backwards.
Yeah, seriously.
But play the movie backwards,
Exactly.
and that's inherent vice. Like, it's just like take any good like crime novel or crime noir detective movie, and then just like start moving the scenes around.
It's like Mel Brooks tried to make one of those movies after taking like 20 film classes and a bunch of acid.
Yeah.
What was your guys' most surprising like actor to appear in the movie? Like when that person appeared, you're like, what the fuck?
That's a great question.
I think when Benicio del Toro sat down, because he has such a small part as well, and that was one of the early ones before I was inured to the idea that all these great actors are just going to be like, you know, falling from the sky in this movie. I was like, oh, Benicio del Toro. But then, yeah, like Martin Short, Owen
Martin
Wilson,
Short was
all
it for
of
me.
them. Martin Short was hilarious as the cocaine dentist.
Yeah, just his performance. When Martin Short appeared, I was like, okay, this movie is fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
Because Martin Short's at the point of his career where like he's really only taking like little bit bonkers roles. So it's like if he's going to be in this movie, like, he was in like Arrested Development as another insane fucking role.
God, he's so funny in that.
Like he's good at playing these just insane characters. And when he came in, I was like, all right, this movie is proper off the rails.
Yeah. It was interesting to see Maya Rudolph. We were talking about her last time. Just there for a second.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. Jim doesn't like her. But I liked seeing her just because it was like,
Glad she had 2 lines.
hey, honey, you want to be in this movie? And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever, fuck it. I was going to say Owen Wilson, I thought, was like, it wasn't like unnerving to see him. And he didn't really like act out of his range in this film. He's
very Owen Wilson.
But I just loved the scene between them when they're like meeting in the dark. And he's like, just smoke this, you know, so we think we're like, you know, we're just out here having a smoke. And just I don't know, the dialogue between him and Joaquin Phoenix I thought was hilarious. But also Benicio del Toro. When he sat down as the lawyer, I was like, holy shit. Because the shot, you see Josh Brolin just look up and he says something, and you just see the bottom half, and then he sits down next to Joaquin Phoenix. And I was like, okay.
It was so jarring.
Yeah. I was like, all right.
You're like, whoa, what's up, Benicio?
I know, it was so weird. It's like he wandered on set. He was just trying to like, he was just coming to like visit Paul Thomas Anderson and have lunch. And then he was like, oh shit, okay.
Wanna be in the movie? He's like,
I'm a lawyer. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how one thing that we were puzzling over is like Doc, Joaquin Phoenix, keeps going back to that whatever medical clinic run by Maya Rudolph, and he just like gets stoned in the back and like huffs nitrous, and we're like, what is this that he can just do this?
They call
in
it
a medical
his
clinic.
It's so weird. He like walks by an actual doctor the first time you see the scene, and he's like, hello, doctor, and the other guy's like, doctor, and then he just like,
He's like, yeah, it's like a free clinic that they just let him lounge in a room and get high and like ponder his cases.
it's like
so
PI office almost.
Yeah, it's so fucking like just acid trip noir. It's so great.
I think I said this to Jeff when we were watching it. I think I turned to him and I was like, I think this is a movie that's for people who have read the book in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, because I would guarantee that if you're able to know what's going on and have like the background of it, you'll end up seeing far more that's clever going on in this movie than we're able to. Like, we're kind of just reveling in the silliness and the performances. But I'm sure that there's like a lot of, you know, literary motifs and interconnections going on that we're not able to see. So it did make me interested to read the novel. I haven't read any of Thomas Pynchon. I know he's very obtuse and difficult. Not that you could get that from this movie, but
So a little bit of trivia that I know about, because I actually wanted to research this film just because I have not read any of his works either, and I wanted to see like what drew Anderson to it. He wrote it concurrently with The Master, because The Master had gotten shelved indefinitely for a little bit, which is insane to me, but that's neither here or there. Hollywood does its own thing. So he actually adapted the entire novel sentence by sentence, and then he cut down. Like he wrote out the whole book.
Yeah. Which I'd only ever heard of that. Hunter Thompson did that with The Great Gatsby.
Because
he wanted to know what it felt like to write The Great Gatsby.
He did that with a lot of Hemingway short stories too.
Ah, I didn't know that.
But
makes sense.
Yeah, so the way that Anderson described the movie I think is like perfect. Like as we are, discussing and not struggling, but trying to find out like what sentence would define this movie. He said it was deeply written and beautifully profound stuff mixed in with just the best fart jokes and poop jokes that you can imagine. And I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like,
well, unfortunately, Joaquin Phoenix doesn't jerk off in the ocean in this one.
no, he doesn't.
Unfortunately, I guess.
Yeah.
He doesn't make the sand tits when he's out on the Pacific Theater fighting.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't fuck a sand sculpture.
Yeah, that's Inherent Vice. It's a big old wild crazy thing.
Yeah.
Definitely watch it.
Yeah.
Definitely watch it. Don't worry too much if you're confused.
Might even be better if you just let that go.
Yeah, you can. I mean, if you want to, definitely pay attention to people's names.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like if you really want to get into it, write them down. I don't know, but I'd say just let it go, let it play, let it ride, let it be what it is, and enjoy it. And if you want to figure it out, maybe just do that for the second watch. But yeah, usually when I'm horribly confused in a movie, I'm not having fun. But with this one, I was having fun pretty much the whole time. It did run long. It's 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it is.
And it was exhausting.
Yeah.
But I think once I gave up, I had more fun with it.
I will say, like, to anyone who's more familiar with Paul Thomas Anderson works, who's not seen this film, just know it's okay to laugh. Like, it's okay to, like, feel like that it is breaking out of the serious mold of There Will Be Blood and The Master. Like, you can laugh at this movie, and it's supposed to make you laugh. It seems jarring and unsettling, but watching Josh Brolin order pancakes in Japanese, it's just, I don't know, it's just fucking hilarious.
Moto pancake.
Moto pancake.
It's funny because the guy's responding in English. Like he knows how to speak English.
Oh man, no, this is a great film. I really loved this one, and it's we're seeing. I think it's safe to say, starting with Inherent Vice. I mean, it's the last two movies in his filmography currently, but these are starting the less Paul Thomas Anderson, his own movies. I guess if that makes sense. Like this movie is still very much the same shooting style. Lots of emphasis on color and lighting and
he's not doing those look at me, I'm the director shots.
Exactly. Though. It's all very subdued. He's not like kind of flaunting his skills as a director.
It has some of them. It has a few, but it's nowhere near, Boogie Nights or Punch Drunk Love or anything.
Yeah.
And then in Phantom Thread, which is our next film, I mean, it's almost hard to see this as a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a departure. So yeah, let's do that. 3 years later, 2017, we have Phantom Thread, once again with Daniel Day-Lewis. So after the obtuse 1-2 punch of The Master and Inherent Vice, PTA is finally getting back to giving us like a straight narrative. The movie stars Daniel Day-Lewis in what he himself has said will be his last ever role. I hope not, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It's about a dressmaker played by Daniel Day-Lewis and a woman played by Vicky Krieps, who at first I thought was Rosamund Pike. I was like, oh, Rosamund Pike's in this. But it turns out it's not. Anyway, they fall in love. They're both pretty unlikable people in my mind, and they have a really weird, unhealthy relationship. The movie is what I would describe as elegant stuffiness. It almost borders on the type of movie I call a manners drama, which is one of my least favorite kinds of story, whether it's on the screen or a book. Like very Jane Austen-y, Edith Wharton-y type narratives.
Oh, wow.
I got that this is just a frame for character drama stuff, but for whatever reason, the style is like really hard for me to get into. I mean, I'd say the movie is objectively great, but I think I might have respected it more so than I was fully engaged by it. The acting is, of course, exceptional. Lewis and Vicky Krieps are tremendous. The filmmaking is gorgeous. But this, I don't know, it might be my least favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. What do you think, Alex?
I unfortunately think that spot for me is still maybe Punch Drunk Love. I have to agree with Jeff on that. But, like, This one, like what Jeff was saying earlier, there's a departure happening, I feel like, with Paul Thomas Anderson's filmmaking. Like, we talked about this in the Fincher episode, right? We kind of split his works up into, like, these different chapters. And I feel like Anderson has arrived at this strange junction where this film did not feel like one of his movies at all. Like you said, I think saying I respected it more than I was engaged is, like, a perfect way to put it. Like, I like Daniel Day-Lewis, obviously, in it. Like, he was great. And you're right, Vicky Krieps was really good, but, like, I don't know. The thing is I love manners drama. I love old English colonial stuff. Like you get into Room with a View, anything made by Merchant Ivory, I'm super down for. I love Jane Austen. I love the movies that they've made in their own way from them. But no, this movie was weird. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It made me feel gross in a way. Like, I didn't like the dive into the mind of this fashion designer, and, like, I didn't like the indulgence in his, I don't even know how to say it,
Mild Asperger's.
yeah, like, it just made me feel
We'll
weird.
just call it for what it is.
Yeah, like, he's at least with Punch Drunk Love, I have some type of, like, relative connection to the character of Adam Sandler. Like, there's something in moments in my life where I can, like,
Well, it's Adam Sandler.
sympathize with him, right? But no, this one was just exceptionally distant from me.
Yeah, he was an alien to me, definitely. Very human, you know.
Yeah.
He's definitely very human. You understand the vulnerability. He has this whole connection with his mother. She even visits him as, like, an apparition at one point, and the way that he's so specific in everything that has to go in his life, like Jeff said, mild Asperger's. And then the way that she ends up, like, entrapping him into needing her by, like, poisoning him so that he'll be, like, vulnerable. I'd say it was definitely weird to jump into this one after Inherent Vice, which was just, like, this crazy smorgasbord. And then Phantom Thread is so understated. It's such a quiet, understated movie. And I think I was expecting it to explode somehow in a much bigger way. I thought there would be, like, I don't know, some revelation. And maybe that's just me being trained by dumber movies, you know?
Yeah, you
It's
were
like,
waiting for the other
something's
shoe to
gonna,
drop.
like, yeah, the other shoe to drop, and you're like, who has the dark secret here? Who has the dark revelation? And it turns out
I believe-
nobody.
I remember you saying, like, you were going to say, like, we were, like, putting bets on who was going to crack first. Like, was it going to be Alma, Vicky Krieps' character, that, like, cracks and, like, poison? And when we thought that, because she started poisoning him, we're like, oh, is she going to go too far and then poison him too much, and then he's going to die? Or is Daniel Day-Lewis going to, like, boot her out of his life and, like, totally redo and, like, and become a failed dressmaker because he got rid of his muse? Because they call him in the synopsis in this movie, they reference Alma as his muse, and I never really saw that read.
No.
I never really saw her as
It's like
his
the opposite
muse.
almost.
Yeah, she was almost his detriment. She was almost holding him back. She was somebody who wanted to be loved by this man because she loved his dresses, and she loved. There's that great scene where I believe it's, like, the aunt that pays for everything in his life wants one of his dresses, and she gets kind of just, like, sloshed and passes out inside of it, and Alma is, like, earns Reynolds. His name's Reynolds Woodcocker, and Daniel Day-Lewis's character's,
What a name.
I know, Reynolds
Daniel
Woodcock.
Day-Lewis brought that name up as a joke when he read the script or something like that, and Paul Thomas Anderson loved it so much he just kept it.
Oh,
he
it's
thought
awful.
he thought it added, like, a comedy element to it.
It's such a bad name. But yeah, so, you know, he created this, like, love for her because she respected his craft and loved that above anything else, just like he loves his craft above anything else, and it kind of endeared her to him. And yeah, spoilers ahoy, I guess.
Yep.
the end of the film is quite strange.
It's not what we expected. Jeff and I had a number of predictions that the ending could have been. None of them were just, oh, they're in love in their weird way. Their weird, unhealthy way.
Yeah, they just hit this. I mean, essentially, she reveals that she has been poisoning him, and he is fine with that, actually. And they have this cyclical relationship that works for them, where periodically, without really saying anything, she'll just poison him, and he will rely on her. Because she says early in the movie that the only times that he's vulnerable and open and loving and tender is when he's ill. And that's very reminiscent of Munchausen by proxy, or Munchausen syndrome, where his mother doted on him and kind of maybe like emphasized when he was sick, or made him feel intense when he was sick. And so
Munchausen. Jeff referenced Munchausen when we were watching it. I didn't know what it meant, so I thought he was talking about a composer because the music is all classical music.
No, I'm talking about a very serious psychological disorder. But it very much seems there's a mix of that. Like, you have Daniel Day-Lewis, who obviously his character has mild Asperger's, and it's very apparent, or something of the same. He's on the spectrum in some way, and he was doted on by a loving mother who passed away, and he is without that in his life, and he tries to get it from his sister, who's very cold and distant, and his aunt is kind of a lush. So Alma becomes a surrogate mother for him, and that's kind of how their dynamic and their relationship eventually evolves to. This movie's very off-putting, and it's not a Paul. I mean, it is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. This is a Lifetime feature movie directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, it's just a very dry psychological romance, but directed really well.
Yeah, you get a lot of shots of people making dresses. There was one moment where Jeff and I nerded out, where it has this, like, the slowest zoom you've ever seen, and it has them talking to each other on a couch. And in the foreground, closer to the audience, is like one of his immaculate dresses, and it slowly zooms into them, and it zooms past the dress. And you're like, filmmaking. It's more about them now than it's about the dress.
But it's like, it's fun to see those connections, but at the same time, it was like those connections were so ripe for the taking. They were right there. He wasn't dangling anything unique or intricate in front of the audience. He was like, here's a romance story. I'm going to write this. So it's what I call his least Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
I don't know. I think it is unique and intricate in the way that it plays out, but it is far less showy. There's almost no explosivity except for some of the moments when, like, Lewis loses his temper, or sorry, Reynolds Woodcock loses his temper. But yeah, it's probably his most understated film since Hard Eight, and maybe even more understated than Hard Eight.
I would say even more. It's so tame compared to all his movies in every aspect, in writing, in character, in just the grit of his general movies. It's none of that. This movie's very polished, very clean.
Yeah,
it's almost
it's
porcelain,
like a fine dress.
Yeah.
It's like this elegant elegant lace work that
it's
if you just messed with it a little bit could fall apart. It's just so dainty.
And while DDL, like, you know, he puts on a great performance like he always does, I really hope he does another movie at least, because this is kind of, in my opinion, going out on a whimper.
It's not going out on There Will Be Blood, that's for sure.
I can't be satisfied with this being the last one.
Yeah, I can't. I need one more, like, incredible DDL performance, which is selfish. I mean, he's a human being who deserves to create as much characters as he wants, but I really want one more incredible DDL performance before he decides to retire, because this one, it feels lackluster. Not in his performance, but just the movie itself didn't give me anything beyond what it was presenting.
I was going to say, I feel like as well as living with Daniel Plainview, living with Reynolds Woodcock would not be a fun experience in any way, in its own painful way. Like, I'm talking about Daniel Day-Lewis's wife now, having to deal with his method acting and shit. Like,
I mean, did you think he even really needed to method for this character?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he
did because that's who he is. But like, it's just like this character. I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like
he probably apprenticed for like 2 years as a dressmaker.
Yeah.
Just
isn't
for
he
this.
a cobbler? Isn't he a cobbler now or
He
something?
does do that.
He was at some point. I don't know what he's doing now, but there was a point where he was like, "Fuck acting. I'm gonna live in Italy and make shoes."
Yeah.
And that was not that long ago. So, yeah, I don't know. Speaking of performances, though, I had an idea halfway through this movie that would have made it the most brilliant thing I've ever seen.
Okay.
Which is where you have the exact same movie, exact same shots, exact same style of performances, but instead of Vicky Krieps as the love interest, it's just John C. Reilly.
As himself or as
An
like
Anderson character?
The same lines, but I think he could give a John C. Reilly performance with the same lines, but I don't think it matters.
his names will be like Al.
I don't think
though,
it matters.
instead of
No,
Alma.
yeah. I don't think it matters because just having John C. Reilly, who's naturally funny, in this role with how buttoned down this movie is, would be so fucking hysterical.
I think it would be great. It is also great today's John C. Reilly because John C. Reilly has morphed incredibly in his career. Going from not Boogie Nights, going from Hard Eight, where he's like young, kind of up and coming actor, kind of juiced and ready to take on these dramatic roles, till like his time on Tim and Eric as just
Steve
this
Brule.
like bonkers fucking character. And then his time with Will Ferrell, like Step Brothers is probably, I think, I would say his most well-known performance to the general audience. And Talladega Nights, all that stuff with Will Ferrell. So
Walk Hard, the Dewey
Walk
Cox
Hard,
story.
exactly. You have all of these. He's built himself into this newer kind of John C. Reilly, not the same kind of person that Hard Eight was. So it would be so. That's who I would be seeing in that role. It's like, like that John C. Reilly, like, that voice that he does. I don't really know what I'm doing. Like weird kind of.
Just go full John C. Reilly with it. Yes.
He's
my
got
God.
the hair from Tim and Eric, where it's all like poofed out on the sides and like
Paul
pinched
Thomas
up.
Anderson, take note. Remake this movie.
Seriously.
Re-edit
And it
this
was
movie.
like looking at him endearingly, and it's just like reverse shot to John C. Reilly, like, oh, like it's
Comical ass
crazy.
face. Yeah. So that's my dream comedy version of Phantom Thread.
We should just try to pay John C. Reilly and then film all those as pickup shots, and then just edit it together.
Seriously.
It'd be hard. It's a lot of shots with them together.
It's true.
Yeah,
so-
I probably have the least to say about this one.
Yeah, this is a very like it's almost a very anticlimactic ending. That's why I called this a mountain, because the end of this is very like, okay, we're done. We're at the bottom. We did it.
Yeah, I wish I loved it. Obviously, I mean, I wish I love everything I watch, but yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to what he does next. What's the
Soggy
next one's
Bottom.
called? Soggy Bottom. I don't know
Soggy
what it's
Bottom.
about. Do you guys?
I don't know if that's a working.
It's going to be
title. I
about
don't know if that is the actual.
It's going to be about a
title.
It's going to be about a pastry chef in London.
Okay. Okay. I was
It's
like,
just Soggy
No.
Soggy Bottom is
just Phantom
like
Thread
a
with
reference.
pastries.
No, it's just a reference.
It's the same
Yeah.
movie. It's with
The Great British
pastries.
Baking Show, because like they always say like soggy bottom, like when you make pastries, you don't want to have a soggy
Yeah.
bottom. And so like I'm just thinking of that, like I'm just like spitballing.
Do you think it's a reference to the Coen Brothers movie? Oh brother, where art
Yeah.
there? Where art thou? Because they're
The Soggy
they're
Bottom
banned.
Boys?
Yeah, the Soggy Bottom
Yeah.
Boys. By the way,
And
oh brother, where art there? Where art thou?
Yes.
That's the
yes,
title.
There you go.
There we go. I pulled a Jeff there.
Fuck you.
Beautiful movie.
Oh, it's amazing. I love that film.
That movie's so fucking
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, I know it's being shot in Encino, this new movie, Soggy Bottom. So new territory for Paul Thomas Anderson, the San Fernando Valley.
Right.
Like,
Oh, he's got to go
Oh,
back
geez.
to L.A. every couple of movies.
But I mean, yeah, as overall as a director, I mean, we talked about it a lot, but I really think that to sum it up, Paul Thomas Anderson has really revolutionized this style of really intentional filmmaking, kind of revolutionizing multimedia shot processing, and going from different elevations of shooting and just really being so ambitious with his camera work. I'm thinking of I think it was Boogie Nights, like the scene where the camera goes into the pool with the girl. And there's just a lot of stuff that's just so innovative for its time. And it's now, I really think Steadicam is such a normal tool to be used in filmmaking today. And I really think PTA kind of put that on the map along with a few others.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know enough about camera operation to say whether or not he revolutionized it at all.
I don't think it's a revolution. I think he just really helped show what these kind of mediums can do as a multimedia type of art. That's what I'm trying to point out, is that he's taking these type of dynamic camera uses and then blending them in a way that's very unique to his style.
Gotcha.
I reference again the opening shot of Boogie Nights.
Yeah, there's a reason he's in the conversation as one of the best directors now or ever. And yeah, it's his shooting style, this really commanding, mannered style that he has, and I love those early "look at me, I'm the director" shots. For other people, that can be annoying, but for him, because he's so good, you just nerd out with them. And these narratives that he chooses, like we've said in our lofty way, is very literary most of the time, if not all the time. And his predisposition towards people who are left of center in terms of movie characters, like we've said before, I think in the last episode, you don't get stock characters.
No.
In a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
No, nobody's stock.
He likes weirdos. He likes broken people. He's as adept at making the most serious movie ever as he is at being funny as hell and letting his actors just play and chew the scenery. And everything he does, even if it's not my favorite, I'm always in awe at his ability to make a film.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite things about him is his ability to carve out this role in the late 20th and early 21st century, where it's still, I don't want to say it's like Tarantino's world, and I don't want to say it's Scorsese's world or anything like that, but he came out swinging. If I want to make a baseball analogy, he was that kid in the lineup who might be towards the bottom, but he just stepped up to the plate, and he still exists in his own way now in this powerful pantheon of director writers. When Quentin Tarantino won an Oscar, I believe he referenced Paul Thomas Anderson. He's like, this one is for all the writers and the directors, and he listed off some people, and Paul Thomas Anderson was one of them. And something about his films and filmmakers that I like, kind of going off of what Jeff said, but in a different way, they're like torchbearers in this art of filmmaking. Almost like there's this knack or this reference or this connection that I have with the cradle of filmmaking, at least in the United States. We talk about, the cradle of civilization and things like that. And you have these great civilizations that take the torch of humanity on. And if we're going to take that metaphor to these films, Paul Thomas Anderson is a very apt and very superb torchbearer in the art of filmmaking. And it's cool to see him in this time, presently, doing his thing. And I'm excited to see who comes up next. There are other directors that are coming up, but he is probably one of my favorites, and his movies speak to me more than Tarantino's do, just because I'm not a very brash and machismo, bravado type of person. So Paul Thomas Anderson's films always hit me in the more subtle, complex areas of my heart than Tarantino did. But
yeah, we spoke about last time how I likened him to Tarantino, not necessarily because they have the same style, but because their voice, their DNA, just shines through, and that's something you can't fake. like trying to make your movie cool or whatever. It's they're very natural directors. Like Paul Thomas Anderson, like these movies are him just as much as a Tarantino movie is Tarantino. It's just like if you cut this movie, it'll bleed PTA's blood, that kind of thing. And yeah, he's just accomplished, brilliant guy. Some of his movies I like more than others, but man, oh man, am I glad that he exists.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we did this boot camp because it was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
It was heavy. It was an intense one, even though it was only 8 movies.
I hadn't seen 90% of these movies. I'd only really seen There Will Be Blood, like in its fullness, and looked at it in an adult eye. I'd seen Boogie Nights in a younger eye.
When you were 11.
So this was a really just interesting delve for me. In a director. I had never really experienced an entire director's filmography all at once like this. It was a unique way to look at someone's style in a way that I don't think you get to see by just talking about their movies in a kind of incoherent order. So it was really just a fun thing to do and gave me a new favorite director. So I appreciate
I love
the deep
that.
delve.
That's fantastic to hear. Yeah. So who's next? We're going to do John Ford.
Shit.
Oh, God. No one's next for a while.
137 movies
I know, right?
starring John Wayne.
Like those are just the movies he's credited with. I'm sure that, like...
Right.
J.J. Abrams.
Zack Snyder.
Not doing that. Oh, yeah, the Zack Snyder.
Snyderverse.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
we're
maybe
at the bottom of the mountain.
Maybe when Wes Anderson releases his next one, but I think like we're going to take a break from the spotlights for a while because it's just a lot. It's a lot to do. It's a lot more to watch 8 movies or 10 movies with Fincher than to watch a movie.
I will say, too,
So,
Paul Thomas Anderson and Fincher's movies, they're not like... Even Wes Anderson, his movies are like relatively expedient and like quick to get through the story and whatnot. PTA and Fincher, it's a small filmography if you look at it written down for both of them, but it's fucking big. It's comprehensive.
It's a mountain, as Jeff says. It's a mountain.
Yeah, I've been likening this to a mountain the whole time. It's just like the watching is the climb, and then the talking about, and then you get to the summit of like There Will Be Blood, and then you just kind of de-escalate from there.
And now we're back. We're back down. We've passed base camp. We're back home. Next episode, Alex has chosen a film called Paris, Texas from the 80s with Harry Dean Stanton, the great and sexy Harry Dean Stanton. And that'll be next. And thank you guys for joining us, both the listeners and my co-hosts.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all. This was a really, really, really fun dive, and I appreciate everyone for hanging out and listening to us talk about one guy for roughly 3 hours.
Oh, yeah, probably even more. But yeah, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Now our podcast is done, and we have to run. We know it is sad, but we had so much fun. Don't be bereft, Jesse, Alex, and Jeff. We'll be back real soon. The Reel Weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Bo 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 bo